everybody. This is Kai from MBUSI. Welcome to our MBUSI Innovation Challenge webinar for our topic Universal App for Supplier Representatives for Issue Capturing. We had some slight video technical difficulties at the beginning of this video, so I'm going to give you a quick recap of what was missed. It was only the first couple of minutes. So what our subject matter expert Ken was talking about was the process of supplier representatives that work here in the plant for their respective companies, capturing issues that occur with their respective parts on the line. In this case is that a call will be made over the radio or via cell phone for the supplier representative to please report to the station where their part has been identified as being faulty. The supplier representatives usually respond by going to that specific station and then writing down the issue, capturing the issue in a manual process, such as writing it down on a piece of paper. With this being said, let's transition back to Ken.
What we're trying to do is trying to increase the feedback loop section of this, so immediate reporting. I actually worked on putting together a simplistic type of app that provides this type of information, but I need better development. So the challenge is a input app that the supplier reps can have on their phone or a smaller tablet and input the issue, provide the information that they have found, they have seen, hit submit, and it goes live. The output would be into a database that can be queried based on an expert of some sort, potentially myself, maybe some IT individuals within our department, and then also with our upper management to provide a dashboard. And I don't mean just necessarily upper management, even immediately my boss, so that we can go and look at a dashboard and see what's trending, see what our issues are. The biggest issue that we have as well is that we have manual input. We have team members who will actually write it down on a piece of paper and submit it approximately an hour or so after the end of shift. I do also have suppliers that will write it down again on a notepad, take it back to their facility, put it into an Excel report, and then ship it over to the supplier, to MBUSI for identification of certain issues. They'll write their information, and based on their education of the part commodity, being a new team member or an experienced team member, a lot of issues are called different names without trying to get into too much detail. But what I want to do is make this type of input app a process in which it is selectable items, very little manual input. As an example, as I state here, barcode scanning. Most of our sheets that come along with the vehicles have what's called a rider sheet, and it's basically a sheet that team members on the line can write issues that they found on the vehicle. They can also write information, and they also stamp off certain activities that they've performed within the process of building the vehicle. That sheet does come with a barcode. So I've run across issues where team members have inputted the production number, which is basically a serial number assigned to the vehicle, and have found that it's incorrect or it's duplicated across some other reports. As an example, I want to be able to scan that off the sheet so that we have no error. The drop-down menus will then give them certain items to select from based on where was it found in the vehicle, what was the short issue, meaning as an example, did it have a dent, did it have a crease, a cut, something specific, and then also the location within that part area based on kind of a map that they can see and input an area. As well, they will also input location in the plant, the shift, and as well, I'd like to, something I found is if they find multiple issues with the same problem, 3 dents within their same shift or a 24-hour period, that they will also have an additional prompting of questions beyond that or data to input. If I have 3 issues, I want the supplier rep to engage in walking back the issue, meaning that they find an issue at a certain location, they see this issue, they see that there's 3 or more of them, and they decide now that they have to go from the line location and walk it back to where the part is installed to make sure that there isn't any more of these issues coming in. More details can be provided at probably one-on-one or group contact later on, but the main point is a simplified input that can be modified based on a supplier. So as an example, I have my biggest commodity is a headliner, but I also have another supplier rep who handles quarter trim or a portion in the back of the car that has carpet on it. They're not going to be concerned with the issues and items that are identified for a headliner. So we want the app to be able to be, at least the input section, modified by an administrator, maybe even myself, or the engineers that own those commodities to put what they believe needs to be selectable. And then in that point, they can output it to be a live usage app for the rep in that process. Then, like I said, that data should be put into a type of a database that we can access, SQL, something to that effect. And then that data then will also, as a third item, we'll also have that dashboard as I talked about, some type of graphical representation of certain items that can be selected and queued up based on what we see trend-wise. It could be something as very simple as how many part issues we've had with this commodity per hour, per day, to even drilling down to those smaller defined issues such as crease at the center of the headliner. How many of those do we have a day? And can I select that and populate that based on a graph? Probably there is a lot of questions related to this on how we can move forward on this. I want to start with the basics of this, develop this into something that all my suppliers can use, supplier reps that are in this facility, eventually expanding this to my own team that input issues, and as well as probably further developing it into something else that this can, can grab traction and use within this facility.
All right, thank you, Ken. So I asked everybody, all our participants, you can enter your questions either via the webinar chat, and I've noticed that some of you have actually called in via phone, so we will give you the opportunity to ask a question live via voice, as well as you might not be able to type your question into the Q&A section of the Zoom webinar. So to get us started, we already received some questions from some participants in advance, and I'm going to start reading those to our subject matter expert now, so he can answer those. First question, Ken. Is there a standard phone that MBUSI or the supplier representatives use?
No, there's not a standard phone. I'm sure the question is does somebody get assigned a specific type of device within the facility? No, that is not correct. So the question probably further details, is it Android or is it iOS? No. We are working with one supplier to use iPad minis to see if they can utilize that type of device. But I do have reps that do use Android type devices.
And of course, there's the possibility that we're maybe 2 OSs behind even or more on some of these devices as they're older, and we know there's fragmentation.
Well,
on
as
the Android devices.
Prime example, most of the PQEs use an iPhone 6s.
Yeah.
So yes, we are behind.
So yes, for MBUSI employees, it is an iPhone 6s, but for the supplier representatives, there's no standard right now. Next question, are there any requirements for voice input?
No, there is no requirement for voice input. I would like to understand the question further. Of what maybe this person was thinking, but bear in mind the facility itself. This is a quiet atmosphere in here, but when you're out on the plant floor, depending on where you're at and where you're located, there's a lot of background noise, so it may be difficult for, if we're thinking maybe a voice input to translate to verbiage on the screen. I don't know if it'll necessarily work. It's something we can try, but right now, no.
Okay, so no voice input required, since
right,
the surrounding area might be too loud.
Correct.
Next question, in the one-pager, it says, should be easily modified based on supplier commodity. What does this mean, and who should be able to modify this? The admin user or just any regular user?
Okay. I don't want just anybody modifying it, no. What I mean by easily modified, I kind of touched on it initially. The app cannot be so general in such a point that we cannot just use it across all suppliers. There are certain criteria that we need to identify. Yes, while cut and torn may be a generalized term, you may not run into cut steel. So what I want and what I mean by that is the input page As an example, you'll start in, you'll put in the production number, that's common. You'll put in, maybe certain locations on the line and process, those are common. But what we want to get down into is the ability to track certain issues in data, and those will need to be modifiable, so that we can go in and say, as an example, I have what's called a DBE. So one of my issues is going to be identified as a crease at the DBE. I don't need the DBE reference related to a carpet supplier. There is no such thing as the DBE. So we need to go in and change what I would like to be as a drop-down box menu. So be able to take those drop-down selections and input what is relatable to the part commodity and input those. A lot of this will be common, but there are going to be areas, again, that will not be common and need to be changed. And to answer that, it will be somebody like myself or other part quality engineers to modify that. Supplier rep personnel on the line that are using the app itself will not be allowed to modify that, and suppliers themselves.
The next question, are there any requirements for the app itself to provide reporting, or should the dashboard be a separate tool?
That's a really good question. Try to think of the question probably to a point of, could you set up the app and then punch a button, maybe myself, not necessarily the team member online, but punch a button and go look at my trend chart. I think that's actually pretty a decent usage of being able to do that, but I don't know what resolution we could use that on. So currently I was thinking that the dashboard may be something separate that is not necessarily an app, but something that you would access via your computer and then generate those reports. I'd like to delve into a little bit further. There may be some things that maybe, like myself, I'm on the floor and I want to see what I have, and I can punch it up on my phone and say, hey, my biggest or my top three. So that question actually generated a little bit of thought for me, and it helped out that maybe I do want to input something that I can do a quick output, maybe a button that says top 3 issues for headliner, and it will tell me the top 3 issues so I can view it while I'm out there, because when I'm out walking the floor, I don't have access to my computer unless I bring it with me, which we do have laptops, but more importantly, I want to be able to do a heat map / also an output dashboard separately based on the data that management, myself, other teams can use, and we can manipulate into certain graphs when we want to look at certain items and attack these issues, as well as the supplier. I want them to understand what they're seeing here at our facility graphically.
Okay. So user management is very important, so that the right people will only see either their commodity, or MBUSI personnel would be able to see the broader spectrum of all the inputs from the different supplier representatives. Right?
Correct. And the supplier is, if you look at the one pager, I think we have that access right now. I have it on screen over here. That shows that the supplier should only be able to look at their commodities, and that should be something that's generated by something with the IT side of the house that says this supplier can, like my supplier, can only look at, one supplier can only look at headliners, can't look at somebody else's product. That's just, we can't allow that. But MBUSI should be able to look in there and go, what's the overall trend for part issues? If we're using this and this does get used across all our suppliers, it would be great to also be able to take all the data and say, generally speaking, today, yesterday, previous day, here are my supplier reported issues from our reps or within this facility. We do have already a system that does that, but this would be nice to see a resolution from the rep side of the house, who are actually the front line of attacking our issues.
Okay. And this already partially answers the next question, which says the restricted access to data for suppliers, is this for the dashboard? And I think this is exactly what you just mentioned.
Correct.
The dashboard should not be visible fully to the suppliers themselves, only for MBUSI personnel, so they can see the broad spectrum of issues. And as we have competitors in the house for same commodities, such as bumpers come from 2 separate suppliers, they should not be able to see their competitors' problems on the line.
And the focus on this is the dashboard you kind of see with the heat map is basically an Excel sheet that I made some time ago. The intent, I believe, of the understanding is the dashboard should be generated based on some selections, not just a one-shot dashboard or a one-shot dashboard per supplier. I think we need to try and work on an idea of that when you go into the dashboard, there's a pre-selection of certain items. Do you want to look at my supplier, my one supplier? Do you want to look at 2 or 3 suppliers and cross-compare? Do you want to look at or drill down and look at a few other items? So that the dashboard should be not necessarily evolving, but modifiable so that you can look at something specific. You can drill down to specific issues. The main focus, if we get back onto it, the dashboard is a lovely addition. I'd love to add to it. The database, of course, needs to be there to trap all the issues so that we can query it and maybe develop our own dashboard if need be. The app, I think, is the biggest focus of what I'd like to do, is make a single tool that that the team members, the reps, can dig into and input our issues. The problem that I have right now is I use, again, another app, and it's mentioned on the presentation, but I need it to be more dynamic than what it is right now. The issue I have right now is when I'm using this little piece here, it doesn't necessarily will self-report or instantaneously report when you hit done. You have to finish multiple items and then hit done. It also has a, it's not as intuitive as I'd like it to be with the app. So hopefully that answered a few questions.
Yes. Ron, did we have questions asked in the room so far?
Is it, how important is this to be an Android iOS app? Could a web app support what you need?
That's a good question.
That is a good question. I'm just thinking, again, not an IT person, but have a little bit of an understanding. If it's web-based, then we have to have connection to the internet. We do have a free access here within this facility, but multitudes of phones have access, or iPads or whatnot, and there may be some small concerns there with the data. Also, the other concern would be the communication over wireless, or their cellular service or whatnot. That's something we probably need to dig into with that, because we still need to use that service to output this data point. So, but the web portion of it, I mean, I'm all for it. If we can make it work, yeah.
I mean, an app, either an app or a mobile web page would require, of course, internet access either way, right? To feedback the data live to the dashboard.
To feedback data live, yes. But on the app, I'm thinking, and I could be wrong, is that you can run without the service up until you hit output or finish.
Okay.
And if it doesn't necessarily have the ability to connect, it will hold there for a second until it does connect and then output. Because I'm not looking for live like 12 seconds ago. I'm looking for, as I explained before, I get a lot of these reports of issues that we're working on after the shift. So if I have a big spike, granted, we do have teams within this facility that should be escalating these issues, but I also want that relatively quickly, meaning within a few minutes. So if there's a concern where we're not quite getting full access, or they're in the wrong area of the plant or something like that, that it does eventually put it out relatively quickly. So that's, I think, the difference.
One thing to mention here, we do have, as Ken mentioned, of course, Wi-Fi throughout the plant, and of course, all of the supplier reps have smartphones with internet on them, but we do experience dead spots inside the plant, especially there are areas where there might be a lot of metal or high bay racks, logistics area where there are dead spots. So if any data is entered, there should be a way to at least temporarily store it. I'm assuming, is that correct?
That would be, yeah. What I don't want to see is that maybe we got a web page open, we can't communicate. They're inputting their data and it's lost and it resets and they have to re-input it again, or they don't realize it reset and thought they inputted the issue. No. If that makes sense, I could be wrong.
Okay. So reminder for everybody, our registration deadline for this challenge is May 15th to get registered. This is, of course, at our website, innovatewithmbusi.com. And the deadline to submit your actual proposal would be May 18th. So please register by May 15th, just so we have you in the system. And once you're in the system, you will actually receive a package from our partner, Urban Engine, that includes a little bit more registration details and next steps, and as well as the procedure to submit your final proposal. Your final proposal can be in any format that you would like. So it could be a video, it could be a presentation, it could be just really a Word document if that's all you would like to submit. Then as a next step, May 22nd, we will announce the semi-finalists, and all semi-finalists will be invited for an on-site visit where they then can meet with our subject matter experts like Ken here in the plant to exchange some more information and also see the real life actual workplace scenarios where that problem applies to and where your solution would apply to. So this gives you a lot of insight and really good details to then prepare for a final solution at our main event in June. If you have any questions, contact us at urbanengine@mbusi.com, or we are also operating a Slack channel where we can foster live interaction. So if you have any questions, you see the email address as well as our slack.com sign-up URL. It is also, of course, all this information can be found on innovate.mbusi.com. So please don't hesitate to enter the challenge. Just as a reminder for our prizes, there's of course some great prizes to win. So the main prize would be some proof of concept support. So if your idea gets chosen, and this is not necessarily just one winner, it could be 1, 2, or 3 winners even, where the main prize gets split up, and we would go into a business relationship with you, so you have the chance to actually deploy your solution as a proof of concept at this Mercedes-Benz facility, and then even have the chance to pitch your idea at a huge event in Stuttgart, Germany that is hosted by Startup Autobahn, to pitch your idea and your proposal to a huge group of decision makers in and around the automotive industry. So the incentives are really great, and we are hoping that you will get interested for our challenge and help us solve these problems. Thank you very much.